In the Dance of Dragons, the characters of the Green faction are presented as sinister and villainous, most of them doing questionable things throughout the narrative. There are crafty politicians, sadists, and even kinslayers in this faction, which can make it difficult for the audience to root for them, even though they're more deserving of governing the realm. However, amongst these sinister and unlikable figures, there is but one character in the Green faction that stands out as being noble, good, and therefore likable: Daeron Targaryen. Daeron was the last-born child of Viserys I and Alicent Hightower, but also he was the most popular. Throughout the realm, he was known for being handsome and good-looking, but also for being courteous and gentle in nature. By far, more than his brothers, Daeron was known for his goodness and kindness, even though his courtesies didn't extend to some of his other kin. For example, he had a bitter rivalry with Viserys and Luke, and there was allegedly plenty of conflicts and enmities between them. He also didn't feel particularly fond of Rhaenyra, his half-sister, but all of this could have been a result of Alicent's indoctrinations. It's possible that Daeron's sense of rivalry with his nephews came from the fact that he was so loyal towards his brother, another admirable quality that people respected him for. In the Dance of Dragons, he proved his mettle and showed that his loyalty towards his brother and king was strong and unwavering. He had a blue she-dragon, Tessarion, which he had ridden since he was 6 years old, and with her, Daeron helped to turn the houses of the Reach into green supporters. For his valor on the field of battle, he was knighted with a Valyrian steel sword, and the men of his armies began calling him Daeron the Daring. Daeron proved himself to be a formidable opponent against the Blacks, with even Rhaenyra fearing him and the danger that he posed on her reign's stability. His victories were important for furthering the Green cause. During the Dance of the Dragons, the Greens had struggled to win support in the Reach, even though the Hightowers were actually situated there. Some lords felt as though the Hightowers had too much influence over the region, and so their support for the Black cause was mostly based on them wanting to end that. Therefore, when Lord Ormond set forth with his army to defend his king, he found himself surrounded on all sides. He was nearly defeated in the Battle of the Honeywine, but was saved at the last moment by Daeron and his dragon. Daeron helped to turn the tide of the battle and ensure victory for the Hightowers, but he didn't stop there. When he learned that King's Landing had fallen and that Rhaenyra sat the throne, he ordered his army forward towards the city, winning more and more victories along the way. For example, Daeron ensured the submission of the Lords Rowan of Golden Grove, the Oakhearts of Old Oak, and the Lords of the Shield Islands. When he learned that his nephew had been killed by the people of Bitterbridge, he showed no mercy to Lady Caswell or to the town. Daeron burned it to the ground with the blue flames of Tessarion. He then continued forward with a greater army, defeating the Black Loyalists wherever they were. Daeron was not just a savage who went around killing and burning indiscriminately. He punished Bitterbridge for murdering his brother's son, but was still decent and fair in most of his other battles, or at least as decent and fair as one can be at war. Regardless, this is probably how he was able to ensure the loyalty of the Reach as he progressed towards King's Landing with Lord Ormond. Daeron also tried to speak out against the brutal sacking of Tumbleton, but with the death of Lord Ormond and the presence of the two betrayers and their dragons, his men became undisciplined and his words held little sway. Regardless, Daeron's efforts were still recognized by history, as pointless and as futile as they were. It still shows the kind of character he is, a courteous boy with a gentle heart. On a previous video, I talked about the bias of House of the Dragon, and how the Green faction's characters are deliberately presented in a negative light compared to the characters of the Black faction. However, Daeron could be a remedy for that bias, especially due to his noble and appealing nature. The inclusion of Daeron could make the story a lot more nuanced, presenting a character within the Green faction that is genuinely good and likable. There have already been rumors floating around the internet suggesting that Daeron will be excluded from the next season of House of the Dragon, and that his character overall has been cut out from the show. If that's true, then there can be no doubt that the show is biased against the Green faction. It means that the show is not interested in showing Green characters that could be perceived as good or likable, because Daeron is obviously a character from that faction that would introduce that kind of nuance to the story. It will therefore be interesting to see how the show handles his absence from the story, and how it chooses to tackle important events like the sacking of Bitterbridge or the battles of the Honeywine and Tumbleton, important events in the Dance of Dragons. What do you think? Is Daeron important to the story? Does his absence make the narrative more biased? Let me know down below in the comments section. And if you liked this video, click the thumbs up and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Peace.